6 here first. As the Black Death brings about challenges to the church because so many churchmen are killed by this thing, which then begs the question, what's the impact of the Black Death on the timing of the Reformation? If you have so many churchmen killed here, and then they've got to be replaced, maybe not as many because the population is reduced. Okay, are those people the right guys? How many of these new priests and folks are undereducated, thrown in real fast, learn on the curve, maybe come in for the wrong reason, or whatever? It may be that we get a clergy here that isn't that great. And maybe we get dissatisfaction coming in here before the 1300s are over. They're suggesting, the church is really facing some real challenges. So it's hard to quantify, but I suspect there are connections there. Now, there's other challenges here too. We're going to go back a little bit earlier, and then we're going to catch up with the Black Death. But there's another issue that's happening here that is impacting the church very dramatically, and it drags on for a long period of time. It's going to kick in here in the early 1300s, and it's still going to be a problem 100 years later. And this is back to that question about who decides who churchmen are. In other words, the church says, bishop dies in France or someplace, we'll replace that guy. And the king says, no, I'm the king of France, I'm going to replace that guy. And the late investiture issue. And what's going to happen here is we get a real face-off on that issue. You can see this in the third paragraph. Beginning during the reign of Pope Boniface VIII, and the French king he's going to be facing is going to be Philip IV, what they call Philip Fair. Philip Fair is going to do exactly what I described. He's going to have folks, churchmen dying in his state, and he's a fairly absolute guy. He's going to say, look, I need the guy replacing these folks. And the church is going to say, or Boniface is going to say, hang on, that's not your job, that's my job. No, it's mine, no, it's mine. And back and forth we go. And eventually it hits the wall. It hits the fan. And we're going to have Philip IV deciding, and by then he started taxing the clergy too. So that's a big issue. This is not church exempt stuff. Eventually Boniface says, all right, that's it. I'm done with you. Don't make me excommunicate you. Remember, the sacraments, in a sense, are a way of controlling folks in whatever situation you want to control them. Now, it may be just a matter of you need to make sure you stay faithful and stay attached to the priest because your soul depends on it. But in situations like this, the politics play a role, because this is about geopolitics. You throw the church into it, it gets messy. Eventually we're going to have him saying, look, don't make me excommunicate you. Philip couldn't care less. For whatever reasons, and eventually, of course, Boniface will excommunicate him. Then Philip says, "Well, okay, I'll trump your ace here," and he marches off to Italy and he takes the Pope prisoner. Well, don't ask him to perform a mass next Sunday for you because he's not. He will drag him back to France, and this is such a shock for the Pope, he dies. Well, that's as far as Philip's concerned, that's an opportunity. All right, now I can replace the Pope. My guy. And he will not only replace the Pope with his guy, he will move the papacy from Rome to France, to Avignon. You mentioned Avignon a minute ago. All those churchmen dying in the Black Death at Avignon. Well, this is why. So we get a really strange situation for the church where Rome is no longer the center of the church. It's been moved to a completely different city. What do you do with that? And now we've got a king appointing the Pope. Wait a minute, what do you do with that? And it's important you figure out what to do with that, isn't it? Because your soul's at stake here. Who do I listen to? Who do I take seriously? Is this a guy I have to? Is this the real Pope? If it's not him, who is it? Who's making the real church decisions here? So this is a big deal. Now, in the meantime, we're going to have we're going to have challenges, of course. This goes on for decades and decades and decades. Eventually, the church is going to say, "No, well, wait, this isn't right." And they call it, by the way, they call it, you see at the top right here, they call it the Babylonian captivity. The papacy's been removed to France, so it's a biblical allusion. Okay, most of the popes in this period, they're going to be French. They're going to do what the French king wants. They're going to certainly respond to French interests and those kinds of things. By the time we get to 1377, Pope Gregory IX is going to understand that, there's so many people not taking me seriously here, it might be a good idea to go back to Rome. So he backs off, goes back to Rome, and he's going to die. Well, then you've got a real crisis because the French still think, okay, we're going to pick the guy. We're going to have the French cardinals pick the next guy. You're going to have folks in Rome say, well, no, we're going to pick the guy. This is now our opportunity. He died here. So what we get here are two popes. Talk about a mess. Imagine we have two presidents of the United States.
As it is, we got to lose it.
You think Obama was still in office? What if Trump and Obama were president at the same time? Hard to be root for it, isn't it? But anyway, all right, enough of that. You get the point. What if we have two kings of England? What if Queen Elizabeth dies and Charles III, says, I'm king, and one of his sons says, well, no, it'd be a mess. It is actually a mess. It's absolutely a mess. It's called a great schism, a great schism, where the church is divided. And this has gigantic ecclesiastical implications because, again, people sold their estate. So who do you take seriously? Now, Europe divides over this. You'll see in the last paragraph. France, Spain, Scotland, southern Italy tend to support Clement, and then England, Scandinavia, Germany, Italy will support Urban. Eventually, this will be negotiated out. I mean, it's just not tenable. And council will be appointed, Council of Constance in 1417, and they will then reject both these guys, not pick one of them, but reject them both, and then pick another guy. There's actually a point prior to this where there were 3 popes in place, so, it's kind of, well, they're going to be pope, me too. So it gets really, really sloppy stuff. But the end game here is this damages the church. Death damages the church. Remember, the Black Death has hit in the meantime here. So this is the Babylonian captivity and the Great Schism and the Black Death all time, just 1-2 punch. So, and the church comes out of this fairly damaged. I think after this, the church never has that level of political power that it will at previously, where kings and queens and emperors and not czars so much, but they took the papacy seriously. They abided by what the Pope said. Those days are gone. Those days are gone after this. And you'll still find kings who take the Pope seriously and are still connected to the Catholic Church and these kinds of things. But the good old days are going to become the good old days. Now, there's one other big thing here on our horizon in this era of the late Middle Ages. It's also going to be problematic. If our 2 big dogs are France and England, we get a protracted, and I mean protracted, war between these 2 states. We call it the 100 Years' War. It actually went longer than that. It's more poetic to round it off to a century. It actually went on for 116 years. Now, it's on again, off again. You don't have 116 years of just fighting all the time. There's long gaps between battles and even between parts of the war. The war is on and then it goes off and comes back. There's about 3 phases in this thing total. But 1337, which of course is before the Black Death hits, and then it finally winds up in 1453. The 100 Years' War is devastating. It throws the balance off dramatically because as long as war is on here between England and France, and most of the fighting is going to be in France, basically, trade is screwed up and political connections are messed up and security isn't there. If you're in France in this time period, there are English armies just running all over the place, and there's a lot of civilian victims, and towns are attacked and wiped out, and there's probably more civilian casualties here than there are casualties on the battlefield. Let's kind of look at these guys. We're going to look at some of this here in just a sec, as far as how they fight. This weapon here is going to be very decisive. We're gonna focus mostly on 3 battles, basically. We're gonna look at the Battle of Crécy here, 1346. We'll look at the battle 10 years later, Poitiers, 1356 here in central western France. And then the last biggie here is going to be up in what will be Belgium for the rest of the day, in 1415 at Agincourt. Now, basically what precedes or is involved in all of this is the stages here, 1337, 60, 29, 53. This, yeah. Yeah. We start out this war with, if it's this gold color, it's France. But there are holdings the English have on what would be France for us today, on the French coast, what would be the French coast and otherwise. Here, up here, because the English armies invade, because look, there's always been these connections between the two. I mean, since 1066, there's been these connections between the two. But we're going to have English kings like Edward III who decide, well, why are we letting France do their thing? Some of that land needs to be English land, so they're going to invade and then fighting in England. By 1360, this is the extent of English control. By 1429, they've controlled the whole northern portion of France and still a fair amount of this territory down here. By the end of the war, and I'm telling you the end of the story, it's all gold, isn't it? We know who's going to win, right? We know who's won. That's going to be France. But it's almost astonishing that that happens, because when you look at the major battles of the war, you're going to think, all right, the English, they're going to pull this off. Well, in the end, not quite so much. We'll see why in just a second. How do I go back on this? That button there?
Try down.
Try down.
Nope, sorry, that wasn't it.
That's all right. That's your fault. That's your fault. We'll all know how to do this by Friday. Go back to my bowman. Go back to this one. All right. These guys matter. Now, let's look at some battles here. Look, Edward III invades. His son will be the Black Prince later on. He invades French soil. You'll see 15,000 troops, give or take. Some of these numbers are going to vary from source to source. Very mobile infantry. Yes, there's knights, but very mobile infantry and archers. In fact, most of his soldiers are not knights. They're infantry. They're archers. In fact, he runs with about 80% archers. Now, the traditional battle scene would have been about knights fighting knights. Now, there's always going to be pikemen and archers and those kinds of folks. What the English have developed here is a weapon that they use very efficiently. That's the longbow. Again, we're still talking about knights, we're still talking about pikemen and these kinds of guys. But these guys, the common soldier, these are just regular schmoes like you and me, they have become adept with the bow. Now, they practice with the bow. They have regular practice with the bow. There are even kings who from time to time think they're not doing enough practice. I need to decree practice. There's I forget which king it was. There's one king that was so concerned that his bowmen were playing soccer so often, they weren't putting enough practice time on the bow. So he banned soccer for a while. So anyway, the deal with the bowman. Look, knights fight how? Hand to hand, close contact. The bowman doesn't need to do that. Now we have two types of bows here basically. The French are using crossbows almost exclusively when the war begins. The crossbow is a fine weapon. You know crossbow. The bow goes like this, kind of like a gun would be later on. It's part of what determines how a gun is designed. But a crossbow is an unwieldy weapon. It's heavy. It takes a while to load one. You depending on how they're designed, you stand on a couple pieces of metal and you pull the bow back, and you've got to get it taut in position, and some of them actually have a crank because the tension is so tight, you've got to crank it up. At best, you can load a crossbow twice a minute, fire twice a minute. Now, you're not using arrows, you're using metal bolts, but still, that'll run through you like a piece of metal wood. So, they're efficient, they're effective. They don't have quite the range, too, by the way, the longbow does. The longbow is a very powerful weapon. It has a great range. Remember I said the other day, if you're laying siege to a castle, you got somebody up in the ramparts with a longbow, you better be how far away? 200 yards. 250 yards, be safe. This is a very efficient, effective weapon. You can't, somebody asked me, asked me yesterday, this wouldn't stop an arrow, would it? No, it will not. This will stop-ish a sword blade. Not this way necessarily, although it could, but this kind of blow, it's effective there. An arrow goes straight through you. Just like that.
Almost as much impact as a bullet.
It'll go through you. If it's close enough range, it'll slap through you. It'll go through your body. It can pierce chainmail. It can pierce plate armor. Now we're at a point here where a lot of these knights are wearing plate armor. They're what we think of as the knights in shining armor. Arrow goes straight into them. One of these longbow arrows could pierce an inch-thick seasoned oak board. So there's no stopping these arrows. And it isn't just about the arrow itself, it's in these battles. Well, look at Cray C. Let's look at Cray C. This is the right-hand column here on page 7. At Cray C, we have an English army of about 8,000 guys. Approximately 6,000 of those men are archers. This is an army that's not relying on the knights. Now, this is what's going to be happening here is the knights are going to be out of date. Not no time flat, but it's getting close. Because in Cray C, the longbowmen rule the day. The longbowmen can fire off their arrows at a rate of 10 to 15 a minute. You're a French crossbowman who's firing twice. That guy over there is 5, 6, 7 times your rate. So you've got 6,000 archers on the field. Yeah, some of it is going to be straight on stuff like they're showing you in the picture, but a lot of this is going to be from a distance. Volleys. Got a line of 200 guys. Shred! Loose! Then, and it's not just, it's hundreds of arrows. Historians estimate there are some minutes during, and look, the French knights charge 15 times on the field. But there are historians who estimate that there are minutes in this battle where there may be in the air, in 1 minute's time, 40,000 arrows. Well, there's no way to deal with that. You can't run fast enough, you haven't got a big enough shield. Think about 40,000 arrows en masse. So this is devastating stuff. It's about a 3-foot long arrow, by the way. It's about a yard long arrow. So yew, wood, or oak, maple sometimes. They run out of yew trees practically. They use so many arrows. But anyway, the French are going to lose 4,000 knights in this battle. We will see, by the way, there is some very, very, very limited use of cannon in this battle. Edward III has small cannon. Small cannon that measure about 5 feet long. It's actually 2 halves of a cannon barrel cast separately, and then they put them together and then strap them into place. Well, okay, big enough charge can blow that apart, and sometimes it actually happens. They're going to have little cannonballs so big, about 3-inch diameter, not very big. And they don't really accomplish very much. On the battlefield, how would they really? That's going to be more about siege stuff later on. But this is the point isn't what it does or doesn't do here. It's signaling how warfare is going to be changing. Because the knights are going to be losing out. It's going to be, look, the longbow does what for fighting? It democratizes warfare. Remember I said to become a knight takes a long period of training. You've got to be a page, and then a squire, and then a knight. It just takes forever to do that. A professional soldier. These guys just have to go out and practice every now and then, and you get pretty good at it. So it's the common soldier, and it's remained about the common soldier in European warfare since, hasn't it? You can be the pilot here, or the admiral here, but it's about the guy, it's about boots on the ground. These guys are boots on the ground. Now, Battle of Crécy will be an English victory. It signals very important things. One, it will end French power for most of the rest of the century. We'll see a rise of English power in its place. We'll see the decline in the knights, the decline in cavalry, in other words. We see the introduction of explosives to the battlefield. It doesn't have a huge impact initially, but this is the start of something. This is infant stuff, but it's going to go someplace. We see the diminished necessity for hand-to-hand combat. Arrows kill at a distance, just like guns will later kill at a distance. You don't have to see the whites of the eyes of your enemy. You don't have to be right here and engage in hand-to-hand stuff, swords and maces and all kinds of things. It's from a distance. So the knights are going to be replaced, again, not immediately, but it's a signal of what's happening in the future. The knights are going to be replaced by soldiers, and that may be soldiers loyal to the king because of nationality, and it may be because they're contract soldiers, what we call mercenaries. That becomes a real norm down the road. Okay, so much for that part of the war. The war is going to be interrupted by the Black Death. Once that kicks in, everybody says, well, let's just all go home and handle our other issues here. So the war goes off. We see it coming back again. We'll see another big battle at Poitiers. The same kind of results basically there. This is going to be now Edward III's son, the Black Prince, will be on the throne by that time. We get King John in the middle of all this stuff. King John will be captured during the course of the Poitiers battle. We'll see, and just think about that by itself, that the king is there. King's on the battlefield. How would wars run differently today if the president or the premier had to actually be there?
I vote for that.
There might be fewer wars. I don't know, there might be fewer wars. There might be more. I don't know. With Trump, there might be more. I can do this. I kind of like Trump, but anyway, and so he is ransomed for 500,000 pounds, which is a gigantic amount of money. It's probably more than what would be his annual income anyway, so it's a big deal. By the way, Chaucer is going to be in this too. Chaucer was a page or a squire or something, wasn't a knight, but he was actually captured at one point and had to be ransomed, not with much. He wasn't Chaucer yet, but anyway, he was there. Look, we're going to have a treaty here that will negotiate out. The English will gain a lot of control over French territory. Eventually, that's going to be challenged. The war, of course, the war is going to be off, and the war will come back. It'll be challenged by another king, Charles V. It rolls on. Again, the English still are going to be gaining ground. We do have finally a truce that will be declared, a 20-year truce, and then the war's off again. Then, in 1413 in England, we get another king. And if you know your Shakespeare, this is Charles V. Of course, we've had Charles IV, Henry V. Henry IV, of course, had usurped the throne. His father had usurped the throne. This is now his son. We get 3 plays with this guy, right? 3 Shakespeare plays. Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2. That's kind of his derelict young man days. And we wind up with of course, Falstaff and all that, Shakespeare. Then we get Henry V. He will then bring the war back. We get a big battle involving Henry at Agincourt, up in what would be Belgium today. It'll be up here. By the way, the site for the Battle of Agincourt is going to be fairly close to the site where, it's 400 years later, there's another battle there. This is 1415. There'll be another major battle in that area in 1815, which is what? Waterloo. And then another 100 years later, in 1915, 16, there'll be another major battle, World War I, Battle of the Somme. All within about 100 miles, kind of from here to Omaha, equivalent distance. Three battles in history, very, very important battles in history. Agincourt, Waterloo, and the Somme. All about the And all about 15. But anyway. With Agincourt, we get one more battle where, again, it's about the English army being outnumbered, pretty dramatically here at Agincourt. Some historians, and this is kind of old numbers, I think, would put the number at about 5-1. Maybe more recent stuff, some historians say 4-1. Some historians say it's as close as 3-2. But the point is, ultimately, the English are still outnumbered in these battles. And it is still about, maybe we've got, what numbers do I give here? I don't give numbers. Some historians would put it, if it's 4 or 5-1, it's maybe 24,000 French troops to 6,000 English. It might be as close as 12,000 French to 8,000 English. Again, the point being, they're still outnumbered. And it's all the same kind of thing. It's still about archers. There's a unique circumstance here in this battle, too. It rained before the battle took place. So you have a muddy field, and if you've got these knights in armor who are smart enough by now to be getting off their horses, and they're on foot, but yet they're slogging through mud, and, countless numbers of these guys fall down, and, then they're, I fall and I can't get up. I mean, they're turtles on their back kind of thing. So it is a very sloppy battle from that standpoint. And again, another great win for the English. In fact, you can see the numbers about halfway down the right hand here. The battle, we have 5,000 Frenchmen lost, including plus 1,000 prisoners, and the English lose 100 men. It's a very lopsided battle. And by the way, among those English who are killed, there will be 3 dukes, 5 counts, and 90 barons. So the nobility takes a huge hit here. Naturally it does, because so many knights are either nobility or attached to the nobility in some way. It's not the common guys. Now, with all of that, and of course the end result of that is that there's negotiate out, and Henry gains control of Normandy, and marries a French gal, and all those kind of things. It's going to be off after that, comes back again though. In the later phase of this, not the last phase, but in a later phase of this, we get Charles V, who can't get to the throne. He's the heir, of course. The English are holding the throne. That's when we get the introduction of this strange, mysterious young girl. From Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc. And the role that she plays is, I think, important. I think it's singular. I think she's a rallying post for the French army. We could spend some time about her visions and those kinds of things. I can't explain a lot of that to you. I'm kind of like Terry with the stigmata. You do with that whatever you want to do with it. But she shows up in the kind of court in exile of Charles, the Dauphin, and says, look, I've had visions, I've had visitations, I've heard voices. She never said, it's not about the voice of God as such. She heard voices of saints, Margaret and some other, Elizabeth maybe. Some others. She had always been highly pious, growing up as a kid, just a mysterious, mystical kind of gal. She shows up in the court and says, of course they don't know her from Adam, and says, you will rise to the throne. Just go out there and get him, kind of thing. There's always that good story too about when she comes into the court. She's never met the Dauphin at all. The Dauphin being France's prince. She's never met him, doesn't know anything about him as far as looks and stuff. So he decides he's going to test her. You heard this story? He says ahead before she comes in, okay, here, you take my place. You get up here on the throne, and and he goes off onto a corner of the room. She comes in the courtroom, and people standing around, and just dozen folks, and she, according to the story, it's not him. It's not the guy at the throne. She wanders around, my Lord, it's the right guy. I don't know what to tell you about that. She will, again, I think, become a rallying post. I don't want to make her a cheerleader. She actually does go to some of these fights early on, some of the places where she is wearing at least chest armor. She's a little slim of a gal, too. She's not big at all. Actually gets wounded at one point in a fight. Crossbowman, bolt hits her in the chest, in the breast. She survives, barely. She survives. Oh, she's just, I don't know the age here or not. She's a teenager?
She was 19 when she died.
19 when she died, yeah. So she's never going to reach majority. Stays in there. I think her story becomes tragic. Eventually, the French do turn this around, and she kind of becomes well, thanks for helping out like you did, but we don't need you anymore, you know. And then she gets captured by a Burgundian knight who turns her into the English, and she goes on trial. Goes on trial for witchcraft. She hears voices and these kinds of things. Some of this, by the way, is over on a later page, if you want to flip over here real fast, because I'm going to condense some of this anyway. Over on page 10, you'll see her more clearly over on page 10. But she winds up on trial for witchcraft and practicing magic and impurity, whatever that meant, and for wearing men's clothes, too. She's cross-dressing here, so that's going to be a no-no. Divisions. Do with whatever you want to. There is one theory, by the way, about this. It's an interesting theory. She was always very, very thin. The people who watched her observed that she didn't eat very much. And there is a theory that she is anorexic. Doesn't eat. Didn't have a menstrual cycle sometimes. So maybe an anorexic, and that's causing her to have these hallucinations. Do with it whatever you want to. That's fine. I don't feel obligated to explain her visions, but anyway. And of course, she's going to be condemned by English trial. Of course, the church is involved in this too. And the church, once there's a condemnation here, there will not be anything. Well, the church could not condemn in a way that ended with, say, cutting your head off, because that sheds blood. And what the church would not be responsible for is the shedding, in case they got it wrong, the shedding of innocent blood. So this is why you have people like her and other witches later on, who are burned at the stake, because that doesn't shed innocent blood. It boils it, but it doesn't shed it. You know, that seems to be kind of a technicality at best, but anyway. Look, the end of the war, if we go back to page 8, the end of the war is in the latter stages of this, the French start getting it right. I think the English get tired of some of these things. We get some viable leadership. The French adapt their military so we get more bowmen and stuff, and they just kind of figured it out ultimately. And they ended up numbers and things like that. And then the use of cannon too. I think French cannon are going to matter later on in this thing as well. So at the end of this stuff, we do have the French winning the war ultimately, but it takes 100 years to pull that off. So those challenges there between the English and the French here at home are going to be pretty rare after this. Some things here and there along the way. But look, most of the wars between the French and the English in the future are going to be fought in other places, including here, right? French Unity War, King Philip's War, Queen Anne's War, King George's War, and those kinds of things. And of course, the American Revolution too. The stage for that is going to be the French side of the festival. But this is going to be kind of one of the last year fighting right here at home. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
During the war, the nuclear of the war, were there ever any notable pacifists?
I don't know, Bob. My guess would be yes. My guess would be it's rare. My guess would be it's mostly churchmen. St. Francis types of folks. I don't know. But even Francis justified the war. War's the thing to do. You justify it religiously. You justify it as God's will. I mean, you know how we are. We do that even now. So I think war is pretty common stuff. I don't want to spend a lot of time, maybe, again, because it's for the sake of time. I know we're going shopping to Terry's time either. Let me capsulize some stuff here. As we get these national leaders, these monarchies of power and scale and authority, we get these families on thrones that are going to be long-term in some cases. First, we get Nicene kinds of stuff going on. England certainly experiences that in the mid-15th century. The War of the Roses, the House of Lancaster, the House of York. This is York County. You go 2 counties over here, Lancaster County. So I don't know who that flag was, those two things together. But anyway, the War of the Roses and stuff. In some of that, we get, again, more Shakespeare, Richard III, and some of those kinds of things. Ultimately, when all the smoke clears from the War of the Roses, we get a new line coming in. We get the Tudor family coming to the throne. That's with Henry VII. And Henry VII, we're just talking about his son, Henry VIII. That's fine, I get it. But Henry VII does phenomenal stuff. The kingdom that Henry VIII presides over is pretty fat and sassy, and that's because of his dad. And things he accomplishes here, you shall see in the second column, right-hand column. He balanced budgets, and he tried to avoid wars as often as he could, because wars are expensive, and that'll mess you up faster than anything else. And if you lose it, you've wasted a lot of money down the drain. And he interconnects people and kids in his family to other thrones, like in Scotland and the Germanys and those kinds of things. When Henry VIII comes in again, you've got a very strong kingdom. Look at the last paragraph. Here's where we are. By the time Henry comes to the throne, 1509, England is one of the 4 strongest powers in Europe, second only to France. And then you've got Spain coming, has been established here just a generation earlier. We'll look at that on the next few pages. And then Austria. We rarely think about Austria as a major power, but it is here. And Austria will stay a major power, oh goodness, through the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. Then it starts to go off the cliff. Anyway, now we skip over page 10. Look at page 11, because we get a new state established here. Actually, 2 of them, Portugal as well, on the Iberian Peninsula. But what we have here is the establishment of Spain. I've got to do this in a couple minutes, because that's where we're headed with Columbus in just a second. Spain is a state that comes together. Remember, what we know of Spain had been dominated by the Muslims for hundreds of years. When the Moors came, the Muslims come in the 700s, then they threatened Paris with battle tours and stuff, and turned them around. They stay in what we know as Spain. The Moorish kingdom down there, including the kingdom of Castile and the kingdom of Aragon. Now, eventually, we get these monarchs on the throne who are not going to be Muslims, and we get. I always figured which way. Yeah, Ferdinand is Aragon and Isabella is of Castile, and they intermarry. They marry. And when that brings those 2 kingdoms together, this is the beginning of modern-day Spain. And this is a very Catholic state. They're very devout Catholics. They see themselves. They see their state as a Catholic kingdom. One of the first things they do. This is in 1487. We're just 5 years away from Columbus. We're about 5 minutes away from Columbus, actually. They so Catholic that they will basically approach 2 other groups and say, convert or get out, or get killed. The Jews and the Muslims. Either convert, or get out, or we're going to round you up. So a fair number of these folks get out. So this is, but remember, and Terry, I don't know something about Terry's territory here, but Spain is a new place. And so when you have a guy like Columbus showing up, initially the response is, oh, no, thanks for coming, maybe not. But Isabella says, what? What if he's right? What if he's right? How much could this possibly cost us? If he's wrong, it won't cost us that much. If he's right, we gain everything. Because we gain access to the East and the spices and all that stuff. We need that kind of kick up for our kingdom. We're a new kid on the block. What if he's right? Now, again, we'll leave it with that. We'll leave Terry to tell you more about that. Now, we put off Terry till the 3rd hour today because we're getting to the point of Columbus. That's who he's going to deal with. I'll talk about Columbus more directly, in more detail, and Portuguese and all that. I'll talk about that on the first thing Friday. So I'm done. He's going to step in.